Frank Reich was introduced as the new head coach of the Carolina Panthers. I'll admit, I did not listen to it live. I did not watch it live. I was deep in an audio editor at that point. And when I came up for a break, I'm like, oh, the interview's over, or the press conference is over. And I was looking for David Tepper quotes because I was curious. Hey, what did David Tepper have to say? Because I think most people understand, not that it was a contentious hiring process. Clearly, people wanted Steve Wilkes to be the head coach. There is a pending lawsuit with Brian Flores that Steve Wilkes is a part of against the NFL. And how the Panthers went about hiring their coach was going to be viewed in the context of what's going on with minority hiring practices in the NFL. So at first, I was like, all right, what did David Tepper say? So here's David Tepper introducing Frank Reich, me thinking that was it.
He's a man of incredible integrity, an incredible family man, a person that we could tell has great process and a great way of doing things. That basically has, a guy that basically checks all the boxes, and a guy that you really want to basically help build a culture and help lead a team, hopefully for the next few years and beyond.
So that's pretty much all David Tepper said. So I'm like, wow, he's really not going to answer any questions? Well, I was wrong. I was mistaken. Turns out that David Tepper gave that podium time to Frank Reich. And then there were side conversations, the side podiums where media could talk to him and Carolina Panthers general manager Scott Fitterer. Here's Tepper when he was asked about how close Wilkes was to getting the job.
The process we went through, like I said, had to do with how we're having coaches in here and looking at the future. And that was the process we went through. Everybody, presented who they had and what they were thinking to help us win in the future. And we really made that decision based on that.
That's pretty much all David Tepper would say on the matter. Scott Fitterer was a little bit more loquacious. And this gets back to what Giglio and I talked about in the previous segment. It seems as though Frank Reich laid out his plan during the press conference, the pillars, what he wants out of a quarterback, what he expects out of the players. And Fitterer said that he had really had a plan. He really explained the plan during the interview process.
He had a legitimate shot. Definitely, you have to give him respect for what he did for this team during the year. He did a heck of a job leading this. He's a great man. But when it came down to it, I'm not going to compare Frank to Steve or anyone else. I mean, Frank during the interview process really separated himself at the end. First time he came in, he was dialed in, laid out his plan. Then when he came back in the second time, he took that plan, went deeper, went to a different level. That's what separated him.
So that's Scott Fitterer, which leads to the question, Joe.
He went deeper.
What is deeper? Well, the part that got me was he was really dialed in.
Shannon Tweed movie? What are we talking about?
It's the he was really dialed in. Are you telling me that you did interviews with coaches who weren't dialed in? They just rolled up, be like, put their feet on the desk and be like, all right, so what you guys got?
Again, the dog and pony show of today will be long forgotten by the time the season starts. You can look at the guy's resume. He has done a good job both as a coordinator and as a head coach. Mm-hmm. But he's going to have to figure out the quarterback position. He's going to need Scott Fitterer's help with that. And then you go from there, because I do think they have a good base on defense. I do think they have some good skill players too. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're that far off, as we saw this year with Jacksonville and the Giants making quick turnarounds by making smart hires. And it also sounded like today, I don't know if Dennis has the clip, it sounds to me like he is going to call the plays. Just based on his answer. That was officially, I'm going to be the one who calls the plays.
I thought that was curious as well. Here's Frank Reich on the play calling.
As far as calling plays, I'm going to wait to see that we get the offensive staff together. Obviously, I've always enjoyed doing that, felt like I've had a good bit of success doing that, and enjoy doing that. It feels to me there's a little bit of a trend going away from that. I want to continue to re-examine that, and it just depends on how the staff comes together and the coordinator thing. I'm excited about the prospects of some of the guys that are out there that could be our offensive coordinator. So I'll wait to make the final decision on that.
You used to do a bit with Adam Gold on this program where you called it the fans later.
Yeah.
You don't need the fans later. That is Frank Reich telling you he will be calling the plays this year for the Carolina Panthers. And you know what? That's fine.
That's fine.
That was one of my biggest gripes with Matt Rule. I couldn't even remember his name. He hired a guy he had never met before to call the plays. It's the most important part of the job. You got to have the right guy calling the plays, and you got to have the right quarterback. Matt Rule is 0 for 2 on that front. So Frank Reich has already given himself a chance by being a proven play caller in this league.
So who's that quarterback going to be? That's the question. And right now, the Panthers don't have much in the way of options. They could try and get somebody in the draft.
They have more options than they've had at any point since they summarily dismissed Cam Newton. Okay, the first time. Okay, because they were desperate previous. The Bridgewater, I didn't disagree with it, but obviously David Tepper did. Then you make the move for Darnold in a trade that, quite frankly, they gave up way too much. The last year, they didn't give up a whole lot for Mayfield, but it was damaged goods.
Yeah.
I think in this year's...
That was a lottery ticket.
In this year's quarterback shuffle, it's going to depend on where does Aaron Rodgers end up? Where does Tom Brady end up? You're going to see a lot of guys out there that maybe you look at and you go, last year Kirk Cousins was someone who was potentially in play. Ryan Tannehill is probably someone who's going to be potentially in play. Jimmy Garoppolo, Derek Carr. So you're looking at a higher grade of options. They're not complete and total difference makers. Don't get me wrong.
That's the thing, and that's where the distinction.
But
comes
I
in.
do think there could be a move to be made. I wouldn't move out of 9. But I would potentially consider trading a different asset and seeing if you could get up. If one of these teams falls in love with Will Levis, who I'm telling you right now, no thank you.
It's going to happen.
But also Alabama, Bryce Young, I'm looking at him, I'm going, he's not going to be in the league in 5 years. And if he is, he'll have a max of 2 years left on his career. He's too small. Okay? And clip it, save it, use it when he makes the Hall of Fame. But he's too small. Okay? But Stroud, to me, and these teams can convince themselves of a lot of dumb things. But I will tell you, I always trust my eyes. And I don't know how you could possibly be a scout and go to the Georgia-Ohio State game and be like, this guy can't get it done against the best competition, because he can.
A couple things about the quarterback and why I say options might be limited. Some of it is through their own decision-making. You can go back to the most talented draft class of all time that may or may not pan out. I mean, Trevor Lawrence looks like he might be the real deal. But they punted on that. They could have gotten Justin Fields.
They was didn't. The one they passed.
Okay, yeah. And he clearly has a lot of potential and upside in Chicago. So they didn't do that. Teddy Bridgewater was supposed to be the bridge, but they got impatient, as you mentioned. But then they started to, you got to remember why they ended up with Sam Darnold. Some of the quarterbacks they wanted to go after didn't want to go to the Carolina Panthers.
Right.
Okay, so that's something.
And I'm not saying a bunch of people are going to now magically sign up to go play for them.
Who's to say that Frank Reich doesn't bring a little bit more respectability?
He does.
To the table,
Absolutely.
Whereas nobody really wanted to be a part of Matt Rule. Who's to say that's not what's going on here? But this gets back to what you had mentioned with Scott Fitterer. He has to start showing that he has the wherewithal to make the right decisions at the key position, quarterback. And maybe with Frank Reich's guidance, there's going to be a better idea of who you want, who you're going after. Frank Reich talked about it during the press conference today in terms of collaborating, in terms of working with Scott Fitterer on building a roster. But what I thought was the most interesting was what he wants in a QB. I mean, what are we seeing in this upcoming Super Bowl, right? We're seeing Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes, two incredibly mobile quarterbacks. We're just coming out of Conference Championship Series where the two quarterbacks in Cincinnati and Kansas City were highly athletic, mobile, that can be mobile in the case of Joe Burrow. Josh Allen, you and I are on the same page with Josh Allen. He might be turnover prone, but you ride what he does, okay? Use him while you can. Cam Newton walked so Josh Allen could run, man. All right.
Hey, same with Jalen Hurts.
Right.
Let him do his thing. Don't try to make him something he's not.
That doesn't seem to be the case with Frank Reich, though, who says, "Okay, yeah, you can be mobile, but I still have my type."
At some level, even those guys, and Mr. Tepper and Scott and I talked about this. You got to have a guy that can win from the pocket. We're not going to drop back. If we have one of those guys, we won't drop back 50 times, but you got to drop back 10 times. It's 3rd and 10. And the game is on the line. You probably are playing from the pocket. So we can develop that as well. You want to be able to understand who you're drafting or understand who you're acquiring, continue to develop them as a player. We can all get better. I can be better as a coach. They can become better as a player, whether we're signing a guy or drafting a guy. But ultimately, that's the challenge, and that's the excitement of it.
That would be my only criticism. being somewhat wishy-washy of the direction of the NFL right now. You know, we were sitting here discussing the type David Tepper wants in a head coach, offensive-minded. Okay, cool. But you also have to recognize what types of offenses, what kind of quarterbacks are the ones that are successful right now. And not everybody is Kyle Shanahan, who can scheme up with dynamic playmakers. Because if you go that direction, you got a bunch of playmakers. Okay, cool. But I don't know if the Carolina Panthers have that right now. So you might as well go in the direction of what we've seen in Cincinnati, right? Or what we saw with Kansas City or Jalen Hurts, or what Miami did with Tua Tagovailoa, and then start to build around that. All those guys, you notice the consistency there is that they're athletic. They're mobile. And
with unbelievable play callers.
Yeah, that helps too. Is Frank Reich an unbelievable play caller? I guess we'll find out.